From the outside, she looked to have a perfectly normal childhood, but things aren't always as they appear. In fact, Melissa Moore's dad was living a double life. He was a long-haul trucker whose road trips were taking him on a killing spree, something he actually admitted to. Keith Jesperson was dubbed the happy face killer because he left a smiley face on his confession notes. And in 1995, he was sentenced to life in prison for killing 8 people. Now his daughter has turned her tragedy into advocacy, writing a book and producing multiple criminal documentaries. So please welcome to DBL, Melissa Moore. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for being here. So when did you find out that your dad was a serial killer, and who told you?
So it was in 1995. We were told when my father was arrested, he had written a confessional letter that he sent to my grandfather, his dad. And in that letter, he says, "I am truly the black sheep of the family. I murdered 8 women, assaulted more." And obviously, I haven't seen that letter since 1995, but it's seared in my memory, that letter.
Can I ask you how that felt? I mean, I can't imagine there's a word for that emotion, but what was going through you at that time?
Shock, disbelief, and something that was really hard to articulate as a young woman was the intuition, the feeling that I would have that I wasn't safe. So with my father, I didn't feel safe around him, and that didn't logically make sense, but I now know hindsight why I felt that way. I mean, one of the last memories I have of my father is actually sitting down with him as a teenager about to get my driver's license, and we're at a diner, and he starts to tell me that he has something he needs to tell me, but if he tells me, then I'll go to the authorities. And I always look back to that last conversation I had with him before his arrest and wonder what would have happened if he did tell me.
Yeah. Wow.
You kind of answered my question, but looking back, besides that conversation, was there anything out of place? Like you're like, something's off with my dad, just looking back in hindsight.
Well, there were many things, but I mean, my frame of reference was just my father. You know, your family unit is your frame of reference when you're growing up. And so I didn't know that what I was experiencing was abnormal let me see how I can articulate it. I knew it wasn't right. My father had an obsession with true crime. He would get true crime magazines. I would watch Unsolved Mysteries with my father, and he would say often, "I know how to kill someone and get away with it."
Wow.
I mean, those are just fragments. There's a lot more to share. There's all these little tiny pieces, little breadcrumbs along the way that when you put them all together, it now makes perfect sense, but in the moment, it doesn't.
That feeling that you described, that intuition that you always had that there was something unsafe about the situation with your father, I think that's just so interesting to me, because a lot of times we are trained to ignore feelings like that, and you kind of are able to lean into it at this point. You posted videos on TikTok sharing the letters that your dad sent to you from prison. What did he say to you in them?
Well, the letter that I posted on TikTok was a recent one. I had just gotten married, and I was surprised when I got a letter from my father. And the first thing, like you see in that video, is a picture of my husband and I on our wedding day. And when I open that letter and I see a picture of myself, I realized that my dad was following my life from a distance. And I decided I would share this letter publicly because I think it was just a way for me to express my shock, and it wasn't in a way to invoke pity. I didn't need pity from anybody. I just wanted to share, like, this is what my life looks like. Even now, 30 years later, he's still in my life and in a unique, bizarre way.
It's chilling, absolutely chilling. We only have about a minute left, but something else we wanted to ask you was about Gypsy Rose Blanchard, because we talk a lot about her on the show. You were an executive producer on her prison confessions. What surprised you the most about her story?
Yeah, so I met with Gypsy about 7 years ago, and I've been following her journey in prison. I found that she was a woman who was coming of age in prison. She was being raised by inmates or being taught about the world from other women inmates, and I found that really fascinating. And one thing that drew me to the true crime documentary space is, as a person who experienced, violence and trauma and crime, I always wanted a way to tell my story, and that's what I connected with Gypsy. Is that she told me that everybody took her story and told it besides herself. And so I wanted to empower her to tell her own story.
Wow. Melissa, thank you so much for your transparency, for joining us. DBL Nation, you can listen to Melissa's story on the True Crime podcast and learn more about her projects on her social media site at Life After Crime. Thank you again, Melissa.